Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to the Sims 4 speedrunning video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building the world of Glimmerbrook, which is the world that we got from the game pack The Sims 4 Realm of Magic, and I'm going to be building a Spellcasters family mansion. So first things first, I really hope you've got yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, a glass of water, some sort of snack to snack on, because I mean I haven't even finished the exterior shell yet. I'm just placing down the final walls, and you can already see that this house ends up being quite a big one, and so the length of this video is quite long, but a lot of you tell me that you don't mind quite longer videos, which makes me really happy because I like building really big things in this game. But this week I really wanted to sit down and build something for a family of spellcasters in the world of Glimmerbrook. Now I don't know if you would have caught it or not, but this past month I have just been very much in the autumnal Halloweeny kind of spirit. One, because it's finally October and I live and breathe October. It's like one of my favourite months of the whole entire year. It's the time of year when things start getting a little bit colder, you start layering up a little bit more. It's kind of like peak gaming season, if you want to put it like. It's just the best time of year for me personally. But then also, it's Halloween. And I like to think that I love Halloween. I have mentioned this before, but when it actually comes around to watching scary things and going to like scary places for Halloween, I'm actually a massive wuss. But I like the idea of it, and so it very much reflects upon in my builds and what I want to build. So this past month, I've done a lot of like Halloweeny related things. I started the month off by building some sort of like autumnal family home, which was basically like a suburban family home. It just had a ton of pumpkins, but then I built a post-apocalyptic base, which that build was one of the most fun builds I think I've ever done, just because it was just something so different to anything I built before. But then last week I built a vampire family home, so you're kind of seeing the trend here. Like basically I've built in every single occult world pretty much that we've got in The Sims 4 already this month, and so when it came down to this week, I just felt like it would be rude if I completely forgot about Glimmerbrook and I completely forgot about Spellcasters. And so yeah, I decided to sit down and basically build a massive Spellcaster family mansion, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and so hopefully you guys like it as well. But anyway, getting on and actually talking a little bit more about the build itself. So the house itself ends up having 4 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms, and it's built on a 40 by 30 lot. Now, surprisingly, this is the biggest lot size that we have as a residential in the world of Glimmerbrook, which, to be honest, does make me quite sad, because I kind of did want to build some sort of like magical spellcaster castle, but with a 40 by 30, it's not really that doable. I feel like unintentionally, I kind of made the shell of this house to be somewhat castle. Like it's definitely magical. Like you can definitely look at this and tell that some sort of like spellcaster or some sort of like whimsical creature will live here, because I tried to make the exterior, once I start landscaping, just very magical with all these different like mushrooms dotted about in the landscaping. I put down like a ton of different ivy onto the walls. I use this one particular window which we got from the Realm of Magic game pack, which I don't think I've ever used before, but if you look at it, you can just tell that some sort of spellcaster lives here, because it's a very spellcastery window, if that makes any sense. But with this build, I kind of gave myself a bit of a mini challenge when it came round to furnishing the inside. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever sat down yourself and looked at the Realm of Magic game pack and basically all the different furniture items and all the different things that we have from this DLC, but something that I find whenever I do spellcaster houses, I personally find it a lot easier to decorate something more towards like a darker colour scheme, because the Spellcaster game pack, we've got a lot of like darker woods, we've got a lot of like browns and greys in the furniture pieces, which, don't get me wrong, I love that colour scheme. But for this build, yeah, I kind of wanted to give myself a bit of a challenge and try and build the whole entire build so it's both interior and outerior. Interior and exterior. Sorry, English is not English in today, but the whole entire house, both inside and outside, I basically just want you to build just some sort of like a lighter colour scheme, if you want to put it that way. I mean, you can see that it's already kind of coming through into the exterior wallpapering as a whole already. So for the exterior wallpapering, I use this really like, chunky, if you want to put it that way, stone on kind of like the front tower and then also some of the back walls over here. This one is from the Discover University game pack, and then I use another mixture of 2 different wallpapers which are both from the Cottage Living expansion pack. It's the ones that are like smaller bricks, and on some of the end pieces they've got some sort of like detail. They are from, yeah, like I said, the Cottage Living expansion pack, and you can see that I've already started placing down at some of the windows. Now originally I wanted to use these windows from Discover University because I'm building on a medium wall height. Like, this whole entire house is built on a medium wall height, and I don't know if you've ever looked through the medium wall height category, but the windows, they are severely lacking. Like, we barely have any. Like, in terms of medium wall height windows and doors and archways, fun fact, something that I actually recently encountered myself, do you know we do not have a one single, or actually all double or triple, black plain medium archway? So you know, like a black archway that you place down to like the inside of your Sims houses, like a plain black one, we don't have one for the medium wall height. Like, the medium wall height itself, severely lacking. We need an update to it. But when it came around to choosing the windows and doors, I knew that we had a really good selection from the Discover University DLC, and so I knew I wanted to use these ones. Initially I was going to use them in the all white swatch. I mean, you would have seen when I initially placed them down onto the walls, I did select them to be all one white colour, but then I realised when I kind of like zoomed out and looked at the build as a whole, it didn't really give it as much definition, and it didn't really give the build that much depth, because where I had such a light kind of like creamy wallpaper for the whole exterior, and then I had these white windows as well, and there was so much glass in these windows, it didn't give it any like depth. And so I did decide to change them to be this kind of like white and then cream and then almost like grey colour swatch of these windows, which I personally really like. I also used the windows that we got from the Romantic Garden Stuff pack, which I never find myself using them windows. The ones that I'm talking about are, you see, if you was to look at like the actual shape of the house, I have like a left wing and a right wing. You see over here where the glass roof is, the windows that are below that glass roof, they are from the Romantic Garden Stuff pack. Never use them, but I wanted the interior of that particular room where the glass roof is to be a greenhouse, and they were just perfect for it. And so yeah, I decided to use them windows. And then, like I said, I used that window which we got from the Realm of Magic game pack, kind of like at the front of the build. It's very magical, it's very whimsical, it's really pretty, and I never find the right opportunity to use it. And then when I was doing this build, it was just kind of like the perfect time, if you want to put it that way. But you can see I also use an archway kind of like leading up to the front door. That archway that I've used, if you're curious, is from the My Wedding Stories game pack, and you can find it in the tallest wall height, which literally never used the tallest wall height. But I don't know if you want to notice, but basically I placed down the archway, but it was just way too big for the size of the wall that I was building on. And so using the tool mod, I then leveled it into the actual foundation itself, so then the initial archway then met the medium wall height. I really hope that makes sense. But I did just want to mention where the archway is from, because I don't think I've ever used that before in a build, because I mean, I never use the tallest wall height. I normally always build on the shortest wall height, but where I wanted this house to be really grand and just something quite special, I thought it was the right time to use it. But as you can see, I'm just currently going in and starting doing a little bit of landscaping. So for the landscaping of this build, I really wanted it to try and feel as special as I tried to make basically the shell of the house to feel. I really wanted it to feel quite grand, and so in doing so, I used a lot of different live edit, almost like fences and wall pieces to kind of section off some sort of like flower beds. You see these walls are just kind of like popped onto the side for the minute. I do end up extending them out a little bit, just so then them flower beds inside of them end up being a little bit bigger. But yeah, for the landscaping for this build, it took me a really long time, and so I do decide to cut out only like smaller portions here and there. But just because I was repeating myself over and over again, I wanted there to be some sort of symmetry-ish with the landscaping, just because I feel like with houses of this size in real life, you often find quite symmetrical landscaping. But something that I did want to speak about is the way that I did the terrain paint at the very front of the lot. Now, this particular lot that I'm building on, which by the way, if you're curious on the actual lot name itself, I believe it's called Rock Ridge Canyon, I think it says in the top left corner of the screen. If you're ever curious about what lot I'm ever building on, whenever I do my speed builds, I always purposely leave the original lot name in the top left right hand corner of the screen, just so then that way if ever I forget to mention it one time, you can always just look in the top left and know where I built it. But this particular lot has quite a lot of exterior terrain paint leading up to the very edge of it, and of course, in classic Sims 4 fashion, they didn't give us that terrain paint, which is so irritating, I can't even put it into words. And so basically, whenever you want to build in this world, you've got to try and find some sort of workaway or workaround to try and make the exterior terrain blend in with the house that you're doing. And so what I decided to do is I tried to basically follow along this semicircle that we've got going on the exterior of the lot, in like the actual world itself. I'll try to follow on that semicircle and bring it on into the lot, and then kind of like section it off with some sort of bushes. I'm actually really happy with the way it looked, because then it also helped make the grand like entrance to the house feel a little bit more special, because where I'm building this house to be for a household of established spellcasters, I feel like this house is probably spoken about quite a lot in the magic realm, and people probably speak about this family and speak about coming to this house. And so I wanted kind of like the initial walkway up to the house to be quite grand, to kind of meet them expectations that I've got anyway in my head. And so yeah, it just helped make it feel a little bit more special. I then also went around the whole entire exterior kind of like boundary of the lot, and then individually placed these pillars and then also this iron fence. If you are curious, the actual pillars themselves, I believe, are from the Get Together expansion pack, and then the iron fence is from, I believe, base game. The iron fence actually comes in 4 different colours. It comes in kind of like a silvery colour, a white, a grey, and then also a green. But where I tried to make the whole entire exterior and interior of this house to be on the lighter colour scheme, I decided to use the iron fence in kind of like this whitish kind of colour. And also, if you are curious, because I'd probably be wondering this myself, where it is a live edit fence, typically Sims tend to walk through them, because where it's not like a proper fence, if you want to put it that way, in the game, the Sims don't recognise it to be a fence, and oftentimes they do tend to walk through it. But when I was playtesting this house, my sim walked around it. So if that's something that you're questioning right now, yeah, my sim she didn't even walk into the fence or in the pillar, she literally just walked in between it, which was really nice for like the realism aspect of it. But yeah, you can see that I'm currently coming in and just extending out this like initial live edit wall, which I imagine to be some sort of like flower bed. I placed down so many different bushes and hydrangeas and ferns. I even used some sort of like big tall flowery thing that is from the romantic garden stuff. I don't even know the name of it, but hopefully you're following along with me. I never use that plant when it comes around to landscaping, but again, it just felt very whimsical, very special, and just very spellcastery. You can see that I've also placed down a ton of different ivy onto the exterior walls of this house. I want it to feel very magical and very overgrown. I only show you me putting it down on like the front initial portion of the build. If you're wondering, I do also have ivy on like the back corners and like the back area of the build as well, but it was just very repetitive, and so I did decide to cut it out. Here you can see that I've started incorporating some of them romantic garden stuff statues at kind of like the front, almost like staircase up to the lot. Again, going in with like this special thing that I had in my head. I feel like a house of this size, with the Sims that live here, with probably the amount of money they've got, they're probably going to have a statue or two on their house. And so I placed them down into kind of like the flower beds. I then also placed down these kind of like magical pillars, is the only description that comes to my mind right now. You can just about see them, and kind of like where I placed down the initial staircase, either side the staircase there's these kind of like pillory things. They are in the world of the magic realm, because you know with the Realm of Magic game pack we've got kind of like that little special world, and your Sims can travel there, and it's meant to be basically like Hogwarts. I made it into Hogwarts anyway for my save file. I've already built a huge magic school for spellcasters, but I believe you find them in that world. I just thought they were perfect to kind of put on like the front staircase area, and so I plopped them either side, and then I got this live edit kind of like flower thing, and I plopped it on into it. Over here you can see that I've now started placing down some fountains, and I use this one, which again is from the magic realm. We do also have this fountain that I've used in the build and buy category, but this particular one that I've decided to go for, this one is from the live edit menu, only because this one's a bit bigger and I wanted it to feel grand. And the thing is as well, with fountains in the game, a lot like mirrors, if you size them up or you size them down, with fountains the water doesn't size up with it, so it's just like the actual structure piece will size up, but then the water will still be the same like size. And it's the same thing for mirrors in the game. If you ever size up a mirror, the frame of the mirror would size up, but the actual mirror piece itself wouldn't size up. And so I decided to use this fountain, which is from the Magic Realm, the Realm of Magic game pack, but it's in the live edit menu. And then you're going to see me shortly actually add some more like water pieces to it to make it feel a little bit more special. Over here though, quickly, I wanted to use this magical well that we've got from the Romantic Garden Stuff pack, because to me, when I was building this, I was thinking, right, how often realistically would I want to come to this lot? If I'm not a spellcaster, I still want there to be some purpose to this like magical family mansion. And so I thought, well, something that I haven't really placed down that much into any of my previous builds, my save file, is the magic well that we got from the Romantic Garden Stuff pack. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you see this magic well over here. This is something that your Sims can interact with, and it can also grant your Sims some wishes. One thing I will say is use this with caution, because I've used this before in my own personal gameplay, and I've had my Sim wish for money, and then they end up losing money, because there's different things that your Sims can wish for with this magical well. They can wish for like happiness, they can wish for simoleons, I think kids can wish for like good grades, I think also romance, and then off memory, I believe if you're a ghost, you can visit that well and then ask for like your life back. But be careful, because sometimes the well is a bit nasty and doesn't actually grant your Sims the wish that they wanted, and sometimes it can backfire. But I was thinking, for like gameplay, say if you've got someone in the world, say for example your Sims partner, they just passed away, but they're a ghost in your household and you want to give them one last chance at life, it'll be a really nice idea to be able to visit somewhere in my save file where this magical well is, and it just so happens to be where these spellcasters live, and your Sims can visit this lot and they can hopefully grant a wish that will hopefully come true, and maybe it might not, but the option is there. So yeah, I placed down the Romantic Garden Stuff well. I then placed down some sort of like archway leading to it that is also from the Romantic Garden Stuff pack, and then in that kind of like little pathway leading down to the well itself, I placed down a little bench and then also some planters. Currently over here I'm placing down some more like fountainy kind of things to this fountain, because I tested to see what this fountain would look like in gameplay mode, like how big the actual fountain was in terms of how high up the water goes, and it just wasn't cutting it for how grand and fancy I wanted this fountain to be. And so you can see that I've just placed down some individual kind of like fountain pieces into the upper portion, or like the upper tier if you want to put it that way, on the actual fountain itself. And then on like the lower levels I merged in this base game fish fountain, which it looks to be some sort of like koi fish, I think it's meant to be, but it's this koi fish and it's got like its mouth open and water kind of comes out of it. I then put them in 4 different areas around the fountain and tried to blend it in to make it look like it's part of the original fountain and it's just not like an extra piece that I've added. But then also behind that little fountain bit I placed down this kind of like half semicircle gazebo kind of thing, which is from the Romantic Garden Stuff pack. Also placed that down behind the well, but again, very magical, very whimsical, just very up my street and what I wanted to build this week. And so yeah, I placed that down into the garden, and then I also placed down another little bench in between it. But currently, as you can see, I've now moved on into the interior of this house, and I started off by the front initial hallway, but then also the walk-in closet. So like I've mentioned a few times already, I really wanted this house to feel as special and as spellcastery as I could possible, and I was really thinking that the Sims family that lives in this house, they're really well established, and they probably have other spellcasters come from different areas of the world in different locations, come and visit them quite often because they are so established. And so coming into like the front entrance hallway, I didn't want to decorate it to be like a happy suburban family home kind of normal typical archway, you know, with maybe a side table and a mirror. I tried to make it feel somewhat intentional with like some sort of like basically somewhere so your Sims can put their hat and coat if they are visiting. And so over here in kind of like the exterior tower piece, I end up making it into a little walk-in wardrobe. So it's basically somewhere where I imagine, say if your Sims mates come over and they've come from, say, the magic realm, or say some other magical world that we don't have in the game, but they've come from somewhere and maybe they've travelled really far, they've got like a thick coat, they've got hats, they've got gloves, they've got scarves, they've maybe got like their broomsticks and stuff that they've travelled on. I basically wanted to make this walk-in wardrobe a space where guests could pretend to put their like hats and coats and stuff away. And so you'll see I basically tried to create some sort of like custom wardrobe piece thing. I end up using these kind of like shelves that we got from the High School Years expansion pack, and I sized them down really small. The reason why I did that is because you can see that I've placed down some hanging clothes. The ones that I've used, I believe, are from the Dream Home Decorator game pack, but this particular item needs to clip to them shelving units from the High School Years EP, and so I sized them down really small. I then got these cabinet pieces and then put them over the sized down shelving unit. I then got this pole, which is from the Toddler Stuff pack. It's meant to be like a pole which you're meant to hang like fairy lights off, but I basically rotated it one way to then look like the actual clothes itself were hanging off the pole, and then I put another one on the other side so that it looks more realistic. Also just makes it look like it's got some sort of like support structure thing. But then I used a side table below it, and I placed down some boxes, some shoes, some books. I ended up placing down like a couple of different statues and stuff, and then kind of like off the side table, kind of like tucked away into the corner, I ended up placing down some broomsticks, a variety of different broomsticks that we've got from the Real Magic game pack. So we've got some that look more classical, we've got some that look like it's like a turbo broomstick and it looks like really high tech and very fancy, but I placed them down. And then I also got some little like wall decorations that we got from the Vampire game pack. They're meant to be like scuffs in the walls and stuff, but I sized them down really small and then put them behind the broomsticks to make it look like when Sims have like put their broomstick up, or like when they put the nail in the wall to be able to hang up their broomstick, it's kind of like dented the wall in some way. And so yeah, I placed that down into the little wardrobe. And then also in this like little tower piece, I placed down a 2-seater sofa. The one that I've used is from the Get Together expansion pack. I then merged in like a little backpack onto it, some like open books and stuff, and then in the actual tower piece itself I ended up finishing it off with placing down some paintings and then also a couple of broomsticks. But yeah, that was kind of like the first initial entrance hallway into the build. You don't see me furnish the actual rest of the hallway, kind of like outside, or for in that fact, you don't see me furnish any of the other hallways in this build. Now, I hate cutting out pretty much anything when it comes down to my speed builds. Like when I do a speed build, I really want to show you the whole entire start to finish process, but for this build, I just had so much footage to work with. I mean, you saw the size of it. It's absolutely colossal, this house. Like, it really is truly a mansion. And so when it came round to the interior furnishing, I had so many small, different, like, intricate hallways and so many different, like, smaller areas, which aren't exactly a dedicated room. They are just, at the end of the day, a walkway space. And so I did decide to cut them out. Whilst we're also on the subject of it, I did also decide to cut out one skill building room, which the reason why I cut it out is because I spent so much time decorating that room because I didn't really know what I was doing with it. It ended up just basically being a room that has a ton of different bookcases in, it has a chess table, also has like a little art easel area, but the actual footage of that room itself, because I had no idea what kind of room I was going to end up making it into, was just so long. And so I did also decide to cut that out. And then also the laundry room, which laundry rooms I do quite often anyway, and so I felt like that wasn't the worst thing in the world. But yeah, I'm really sorry that I had to cut them out. I hope you don't mind, but it would just make the video so much longer. Like once I had all my footage into my Premiere Pro software and I sped it up and I edited it down, it was still well over an hour with like the hallway footage in, with like this extra skill building room in, just all of the pieces that I felt like weren't exactly the most necessary to the build left in. It just made the speed build way too long. And so yeah, I'm really sorry and I really hope you don't mind, but like I said, there will be screenshots for absolutely everything at the end of the video if you do want to see how they turned out. But anyway, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved over and I started furnishing the kitchen, which this kitchen was so much fun to decorate. So in here, I decided to use these counters, which funnily enough are from the Vampires game pack. Now, we do have some counters from the Realm of Magic game pack, and like I said, coming into this build, I really wanted to try and focus and kind of give myself a bit of a mini mission to try and furnish the interior of this house to be a bit of a lighter colour scheme, you know, using a lot of white and cream and beiges. I really wanted to try and steer away from using like darker wood tones if I could. I mean, I use them here and there in like small drips and drabs just to have a little bit of like just change it up a bit, but for the most part I wanted to try and keep it to the lighter colour scheme. And although we do have some Realm of Magic counters, I just wasn't a fan of them in the lighter colour swatch, and so I decided to use these ones, which are from Vampires, and they come in the most beautiful like green cabinets with like cream countertop piece. And so yeah, I decided to use these ones. And then for like the oven stove piece, I tried to make it feel a little bit more fancy than like a regular kitchen would be. And so what I did is I built 2 walls either side of these ovens that I placed down. I placed down 2 ovens, so this household, if they want to, 2 people could bake a pie at the same time, if you want to put it that way. But I placed down these 2 ovens, and then either side I placed down these columns, which again, actually, them columns are from the Vampires game pack. And then above it, I placed down this spandrel, which I think the one that I've used is from the StrangerVille game pack. But then in the actual like little oven bumping, if you want to put it that way. I placed down this little shelving unit, which is from Cottage Living, and I cluttered it up with loads of different like spices and just bits and bobs and just stuff, saucepans and just random kitchen-y items basically. And then either side I just cluttered up the actual counterpieces itself. I initially was going to use that stand mixer that we got from the Home Chef Hustle stuff pack, but I really didn't feel like this Sims family would be the ones to have a mixer like that. I mean, they're spellcasters. They literally can just put something in a cauldron and cast a spell and make the spoon move itself. And so I didn't decide to use a standalone mixer. I did decide to use a microwave though, just because you've then got some more options when it comes around to dinner time. But I end up cluttering the side counterpieces with like loads of different books and spices and just some bits and bobs basically. Over here you can see that I'm currently coming in and furnishing like this breakfast counter bar area, and one thing that I did, which I just think looks so cool, I used this scale which is from the Realm of Magic game pack, but when you place it out of like the build and buy category it hasn't got anything in it. I thought, perfect opportunity, I'm going to move objects and different ingredients which your Sims could use in spells into that little like stand, and so that is what you just saw me do. I placed down some like different spicy mushrooms and some basil. I think also placed down like an apple and just random ingredients which you can commonly find in like Spellcasters spell like for their ingredients for it. But then on the actual breakfast bar itself, also placed down this open cookbook. The one that I've used is from the Home Chef Hustle stuff pack. Also placed down like a little fruit bowl. Also placed down an open book, and what I was thinking it could be like some sort of cup of coffee. And then over here on the other side of the wall, on one section I placed down this shelving unit which is from the Jungle Adventure game pack. I do end up cluttering it up with like a radio station, a few different I think potions, and just like random bits and bobs. And then on the other side I placed down a cauldron which initially I was placing down thinking it wasn't going to work and I purely wanted it to be for decorative. But your Sims can actually use that cauldron if they want to. They can make an absolutely massive, colossal serving of mac and cheese or chilli, whatever they fancy. Which I'm not sure if many people know this, but if you have a cauldron in your Sims household, for some reason, I don't know why they would have one if they're not a spellcaster, but say for example, your normal human Sim for some reason has this absolutely massive pot in their front room, they can make either a colossal serving of mac and cheese or chili. You know, like with the serving portions in the game, you have a single serving, you have a serving of 4, or you have a serving of 8. With the cauldron you can make, I think it might be potentially 12 servings of mac and cheese and chili off memory. It's just a massive amount of food basically. But yeah, I placed it down into the corner. Initially I was thinking it could be a cauldron that doesn't work, and I placed down some spider webs around it to try and show that it's out of use, you know, no one really uses it. But when I had my Sim come in and playtest this build, yeah, my Sim was able to make a massive amount of chili from that little cauldron. But yeah, I just popped that into the corner. But over here you can see that I've now moved over and I've started furnishing at the dining room. So in here I used the Realm of Magic 3-tile table and then also the matching chairs. I did the chairs in kind of like a bit of a weird formation because we have 2 dining chairs that we got from the Realm of Magic game pack. We have one that's got a really tall back and then another version of that chair but with like a slightly shorter back so it doesn't look as grand. But I decided to use the tall back ones at both ends of the table and then also in the middle of the table, and then use the smaller ones either side of it. It just looks a little bit more like whimsical and I really liked it. But yeah, I placed that down into here. Also ended up doing the same trick that I did in my build last week when I built that vampire's family home, where I basically used a painting and made it look like a mirror by merging in some mirrors into the painting itself. Now the way that you do this is actually really simple. It probably seems like it's going to be a lot harder than what it actually is, but basically what you do is you build a wall on a diagonal. If you do want this painting mirror combo to be on a diagonal, I wanted it to be in the corner of the room, and so I decided to build the wall on a diagonal, but you can also just do it on like a flat wall. But basically you build this wall and then you get the painting to snap to where you want it to be. You then delete the wall behind it, but then the mirror should still be floating, or like the painting that will soon be a mirror should be floating. And then I built another diagonal wall and then I placed down 2 mirrors and kind of like collided them together because I knew that the mirror wouldn't be big enough to fill out the original painting because it is quite a thick frame. And so I got 2 mirrors and I merged them together. I then deleted the wall that the mirrors was on, and then using the tool mod and the move objects, I basically highlighted these mirrors and then merged them into the frame of the painting. And then I also rotated the painting itself so then it looks like it's leaning backwards. really hope that makes sense, but if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. And also, actually, I did this last week, but I didn't mention it. If you're a console player and you want me to upload a version of like that mirror onto the gallery, because I'm using the tool mod, which is a mod that allows you to like manipulate objects and move objects into a particular way. But unfortunately you can't use that if you're on console. If you're a console player and you want me to upload a version of like a room with that onto the gallery, let me know, because I'll happily do that. I recently did this thing with the new TV that we've got in the game, because if you're not aware, with the, I think it was the modern Luxe Kit, we got this new TV which looks like a painting when it's off. It's really cool. But basically I did a build where I built like this French country home, and I didn't want there to be like a proper like TV built-in unit. I wanted it to look a little bit more less technical, and so what I did is I got this art easel and then I got this new TV, but using the same method that I used in this build with like the mirrors and the painting. I basically took this new TV and then rotated it and then moved objects onto the actual art easel itself to make it look like the art easel was holding the TV up, and then your Sims could use it as a normal TV. I asked you guys if you would like a version of that uploaded to the gallery, because if you're a console player it's really tricky to do, and a lot of you said that you liked that, and so I ended up uploading that onto the gallery if you are interested. But yeah, if you want a similar thing for me to do, kind of like a little room where I make that little standalone mirror both onto a diagonal wall and then also onto a straight wall, and it's kind of like lean in, let me know, because I'll happily build one and then upload it for you guys. But yeah, anyway, moving on. As you can see, I finished up the dining room and now I've moved on into the absolutely colossal lounge room. This room ends up being, I mean you can see, but it's just so big. I think the initial like grid by grid is something like 7 by either 9 or 10 tiles. It is just, there was so much space in this room and I really didn't know how I was going to fill it out and how I was going to decorate it. In the end, I feel like I managed to like make it look less big than what it actually is. And so what I decided to do is use this fireplace that we got from the Room of Magic game pack, place that either side of these archways leading into the actual room itself. One archway leads in from the kitchen and then the other archway leads in from the dining room. So you kind of got like 2 different areas that you can come into this build from, or like this room from. But I placed down the fireplace in between them archways. I then used 2 different sofas. The plain like Chesterfield leather sofa that has no pillows on, that one is from the Cottage Living expansion pack, and then I also used another one which is from the Growing Together DLC. It looks like the same sofa, but that version just has like pillows and stuff on, and so I decided to use them too. Placed down like a little coffee table in the middle of them, and then behind it I placed down this quite grand piano. The one that I've used is from the Wedding Stories game pack, but it looks a little bit more like fancy, a little bit more like spellcastery, because it's got like all of this plants going up the side of it, and the actual shell of the piano itself has some sort of like intricate detail. I then also placed down a little side table. I placed down a bar into the lounge room, and then also kind of like a little music station and random little bits and bobs here and there. But now, as you can see, I've now moved on into the next room, which is one of my favourite rooms in this whole entire build, which is the greenhouse. So in here, this is on like the front left hand wing of the house, if you remember where I was talking about using them at romantic garden stuff windows. But I just basically wanted it to feel like, and I don't know if you're going to get my reference, but you know the Harry Potter films? You know, there's this one scene and they're in like some sort of lesson, and I think they're pulling out like mandrakes out of like these plant pots or something. I don't know what it is. I wanted it to feel like that. I wanted it to feel like a proper Spellcasters little greenhouse where they grow all their different magical ingredients for all their different spells and potions. And so yeah, that is pretty much what I did. I went to town with placing down loads of different ivy into this room, both ivy growing up the windows, up the doors. I even placed down some ivy onto some sort of like shelving unit that I popped above the little flower arranging table. There is of course also a flower arranging table in here, so if your Sims want to, they can also make some bouquet of flowers. And then as well as that, there is just a ton of different planters. I've already got my Sims to come in and pre-plant them. In the planters themselves, I placed down mandrake, the other one, which I can't think what it is off the top of my head, but with the Realm of Magic game pack, we got 2 new ingredients that your Sims would often use in spells. I placed down both of them ingredients into this room. I then also placed down some basil. I find that whenever my Sims are spellcasters myself, they always need like basil for ingredients for potions, and so I planted some basil into this room, also planted some other like ingredients that are quite hard to come by, so I placed down some what we got from the Outdoor Retreat game pack, like poison fire leaf and them little like special mushrooms that you get from that game pack as well, planted them into here. I just basically wanted it to be a really decorated greenhouse, but then also have, so it's really usable when it comes around to gameplay, so your Sims can actually come in here and just pick up loads of different plants to use in their potions. Also end up placing down some ivy, hanging off some spandrels, but it just looks so good. The actual ivy vine that I've used, by the way, that one is from the Jungle Adventure live edit menu. And also, by the way, the reason why there is just like a random 2 columns and spandrels in that room is because I wanted it to look like the room above the greenhouse had sort of like support structure. So basically, if you was to go all walls up and then zoom out onto the house, you will see that in the greenhouse room, where it's a glass room, there is some sort of like bump out on the floor above it, which that bump out ends up being in one of the bedrooms. But basically, on the lower level, there's kind of like this awkward ceiling to the room that's above it, and I didn't want it to look so awkward, and so in there, yeah, I ended up placing down a column either side and then like a spandrel. It's purposeful. It also just looks really nice and it looks really pretty, but it is purposeful to look like some sort of like support beam structure for the little bit of floating room. I say floating room, I mean, it's not a floating room anymore, but originally, when I came in and I was doing the wallpapering and stuff, I noticed that little bit of room above the greenhouse looked like it was floating, and I didn't like it. And so, yeah, that is the reason why I added in some columns and then some spandrels, but I feel like it just makes the greenhouse just look a little bit more interesting anyway, and then that way I could hang off that little, like, ivy from Jungle Adventure, and it looks so pretty in there, and the screenshots as well of that room are just so lovely. But anyway, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved on downstairs into the basement, because there is also a basement in this house, and I've moved on into some sort of like magical room. I don't even know what we class this as. So basically, where I'm building this Spellcaster Mansion, of course I needed to have some sort of cauldron space in this house somewhere where I imagine that this household makes all of these different potions that maybe they sell to other spellcasters, and I wanted there to be some sort of like proper whimsical spellcastery room, if you get my drift. So ended up being in the basement. I did decide to cut out like the hallway footage above this room, because with getting down into the basement, when you actually walk in through the front initial doorway into the house itself, like you walk through the front doors, you hang your hat and coat and stuff up, you actually walk in, you have the staircase where you can go upstairs, but then there ends up being a door, which if you go through that door, there's kind of like an awkward shaped room which then leads down into this basement. I did decorate that room off camera because it was kind of like a hallway. It's got real like gameplay purpose in there. I basically just cluttered it up with loads of different side tables, loads of different plants, a few different like odd potions that I imagine were made down here in the basement. But in the actual basement room itself, yeah, I just wanted it to be basically like the cauldron room, where your Sims can come downstairs and they can practice their magic, they can make all these different potions and just have it be really magical. In here, following along the theme with the greenhouse, I end up placing down so much ivy onto the walls, around the archways. Again, I moved objects from ivy onto like some shelving units and stuff. The ivy that I've used that kind of like coming out of these cabinets, I believe it's just a base game ivy itself, but it looks really nice. And then there's a version of it that doesn't have any flowers, and that one is from the Horse Ranch expansion pack. But in the actual initial cauldron room itself, if you want to put it that way, that ends up being, of course, the cauldron. Also end up placing down loads of different like cabinets that don't have any gameplay attached to them, they're just purely for decorative, but I felt like it was necessary to include it somewhere in this build, and so I placed them down. Also placed down like a little sofa in between them, and then there is also like a bookcase wall. But then you go through these archways and then you get met into this next room, which is, and please forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly, the seance room. I feel like I've pronounced that really incorrectly, so please do forgive me. It's not in my normal vocabulary to say that word, but basically in the Sims 4 Paranormal Stuff pack, your Sims can basically become some sort of like psychic. We have this table in the game which you can attach this little like psychic ball onto, and your Sims can pretty much talk to the dead, they can connect to the dead, they can make some weird spooky stuff happen in particular Sims houses if they want to. And where it's quite magical and quite spellcastery like, of course I wanted to include it in this house, and so it ends up being in the basement just off the cauldron room. So in here I initially placed down the actual table itself, then I placed down 4 chairs around it. I then placed down like this circular rug which you get from the debug menu from the Paranormal Stuff pack to make it look like it's the circle that's been drawn when Sims have been actively sitting at that table and, you know, they've been trying to talk to like the dead or something. But then behind it, I placed down these shelving units, which they are from base game, believe it or not, but I sized them up really big and I tried to make it look like some sort of shelving unit that has all these different like little magical ghosts in. There's all these different familiars, there's all these different potions and just candles and just spellcastery bits and bobs basically. And in a second you're going to see I go to town with the candles in not only this room but then also in the whole entire basement itself, because when I was coming in and I was decorating it, I wanted to be able to see every single colour swatch of everything that I was placing down correctly. But then once I'd got it all down and I was happy with everything, I then basically went in, deleted the ceiling lights in this room, and then go to town with these debug candles, which are from the Eco Lifestyle debug menu. So these are candles that your Sims can actively make in the candle making station in the game. Also merged in it some ones that we got from the Paranormal Stuff pack as well. The ones from the Paranormal Stuff pack though, I found have a bit of like a green lighting glow to them, but I also placed them down in combination and I just think the end result of that room, it just looks so good. Like the screenshots as well of the basement, it just looks so magical and so whimsical, and it just looks so spellcastery. I know I've said that so many times in this build, but that was really my main focus when it came into building. Well, I mean, it's a Spellcaster Mansion, so I'm going to try and make it feel as magical as I could possible, but just adding them little candles into the room in replacement of the ceiling lights, honestly, made a world of a difference. And so I end up doing something very similar in one of the bedrooms in this house, which I will shortly be moving on into, but currently you can see that I've just come in and started furnishing one of the bathrooms. Now, like I said, there is 5 bathrooms in total in this house, and like always, I only ever show the furnishing for one, just because they're quite repetitive bathrooms, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I can't place a toilet down 5 times and keep it interesting, and so always cut out all the other bathrooms in my build and I only ever keep in one. But this bathroom was a really weird and difficult shape for me to furnish. One thing that was kind of like the first problem that I ran into, has these absolutely massive windows. It's a bathroom, you don't, realistically in bathrooms you don't want to have as big of a window, let alone a floor to ceiling window, because your Sims get in the bathtub, they're having a wee on the toilet, you don't want people to be able to see in. And so the first initial problem that I faced was, okay, how do I cover these up? End up using these curtains that we got from the modern Luxe Kit, I think it is, these like floor to ceiling like curtains, and I merged them in together to make it look like your Sims could just pull the curtains and then it's a completely blackout room. I then did some sort of like a platform into the bathroom as well. The actual bathroom shape was just so long and skinny, and I needed to give it something to make it look a little bit more interesting. And so where the bathtub is, I decided to just build a 1 platform higher platform, so then your Sims would kind of have to like walk up onto the bath, and it just looks a little bit more grand, it just feels a little bit more special. But then in here I decided to use the counters that are from the Vampires game pack, the same ones that I used downstairs in the kitchen, but I just used them in a black and white swatch. And then I also placed down a little toilet, and then also some sort of like sink area, cluttered that up. And then yeah, that was pretty much it for that bathroom. There doesn't end up being a shower in that particular one, but there is, like I said, 5 other bathrooms in this house. There is plenty of showers. It was just literally the only bathroom pretty much that didn't end up having a shower and bath combo, but it was just like the most interesting one I found anyway to watch the footage back of. And so yeah, that is why I decided to show the footage of that one. But anyway, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved over and I started furnishing one of the first bedrooms, which is the teenager's bedroom. So I haven't even mentioned that this house is going to be for my save file, I don't think anyway. I know that I've referenced I wanting the wishing well to be in this house, it gives you some sort of initiative to visit this house in my save, but I didn't really outright come out and say that this is going to be for my save file. It is, by the way, and there is going to be a pre-existing family living here in my save, which is going to be the Charm family. Now, this is my second time building a house for this family for my save file, because initially I had already built them a house which was in my save. It's been sitting in my save for a while now, and to be honest, I just revisited it recently, and I just feel like for this Charm family, I could have just built them so much better of a house than what I previously had done, which sounds so bad, but I'm just slating myself here. But basically, I feel like I've been doing speed builds for years now, and I can honestly just look at my builds from a few years ago and just see how much different I would build in comparison to the past couple of years. I've just the way that I build, first of all, has just completely changed. My style has changed. I have got a completely different style now, and I've been looking at the Chalmers family house in my save file for a while now, and I've been wanting to rebuild it just because I feel like I could just rebuild them something better, and that is basically what I did. And by the way, if you look at their previous house that I built them, so completely different, like completely different. Their initial house that I built them, it had like Tudor wallpaper, it was very dark, it had like a darker colour scheme, basically the complete polar opposite to the house you're seeing me build right now. But I just love this one so much better, and so I really hope you guys don't mind that I've decided to rebuild their house. I was a bit worried that you might be a bit annoyed with me that I'm rebuilding their house, but I just feel like I've just got so much better as a builder over time. And yeah, I didn't really, no, I still do like their old house, but I don't love it as much as what I did back then, if that makes any sense. But anyway, yeah, I'm building a house for the Charm family, and I'm building currently the teenager's bedroom, which is Gemma Charm. Now, even though I did decide to basically bulldoze their initial house that I built for this family, I did really like the storyline that I gave to this household, and more so in to Gemma. Like, I really liked Gemma's original storyline that I gave her, which, if you're unfamiliar, which if you haven't watched that previous video, I'll be very surprised, to be honest, if anyone has watched that video. It's really old, but in that initial video, I mentioned that I really liked the fact of Gemma, the teenager, being a bit of a rebellious spellcaster, and she's kind of like rebelling against her mum in the sense of she has a vampire boyfriend, which hopefully you might be able to see the references to that I've made in her bedroom, because basically I had this idea that even though her initial traits doesn't show that she's going to be some sort of like rebel, and she could be good as gold, but I always just like the idea of her being a bit rebellious. She's kind of like rebelling against her mum. Her mum's always been someone that's been very strict, and she wants her offspring to have like the best life possible, and she wants them to be the best spellcasters that they can be. I just really like the idea that Gemma doesn't fancy that, and she actually, in fact, fancies a vampire, and she's got a vampire boyfriend. And so in her room, you can see that I placed down like little vampire, almost like learning guides. I'm not sure how you say the name of them, so that's why I'm avoiding it. But basically, if you want to learn about the vampire skill within the game, you have to read these particular series of books. And I basically found them books in the debug menu and just scattered them about in her room. I hid some in the bookcases, I hid some, I think, under the bed, and just all these different like places here and there to try and reference that she has got some sort of like knowledge to vampires, or at least she's trying to have some sort of knowledge about vampires, because if she has got this vampire boyfriend, she's gonna want to know about the ins and outs of being a vampire. And so yeah, I scattered some like little Easter eggs, if you want to put it that way, in her room. I did also try and find some postcards that looked like Forgotten Hollow, but I couldn't find any, and so I just tried to use some postcards that looked a little bit darker, a little bit just not like Willow Creek. It looks like some sort of older world, so it could potentially be Forgotten Hollow. But yeah, I would have liked to have added some postcards that could have been Forgotten Hollow, and maybe that's how she met her vampire boyfriend. Maybe they were like pen pals or something, and then she found out that he's a vampire, but she's in her like rebellion phase, so she doesn't really care. And so yeah, maybe they send each other postcards or something. But in her room, you can see that it ends up being a completely different colour scheme to the rest of the house. I mean, I've now moved on into another bedroom, but it is just so completely different and so dark in comparison to the rest of this house. But I wanted to show her rebel kind of phase, and I wanted to try and get that across with the colours that I used in her room. Like I said, I did a very similar thing in Gemma's bedroom with the lighting. I basically took away all the lights, ended up adding one ceiling light at the very end, but the majority of the lighting in that room ends up becoming from candles that are like scattered about in different areas. But in her bedroom, she ends up having a double bed, loads of different bookcases, there's some sort of like little book nook built into the wall, and then there is also an art easel in that room as well. She has the art lover trait, and so I thought it would be nice to give her like a little painting station. But as you can see, I've now moved over, and I'm actually just coming in and furnishing the next bedroom, which is the mum's room. So in here, I tried to decorate it to be just basically similar to the rest of the house, because I'm thinking the mum probably designed the interior of the house, and so she would have brought across that same colour scheme into her bedroom. And so in there, I decided to use the same wallpaper that I used downstairs in the lounge room, that Cottage Living like blue floral wallpaper. I then used the big fancy bed that we got from the Room of Magic game pack in that room as well, because I wanted to use that bed somewhere in this house, and I felt like where she is like the mum of the house and she is like the older generation, if you want to put it that way, I wanted to give her some sort of like fancy bed area, even though there is some rooms that ends up having like platforms like the one that I've now moved on into. But yeah, I just wanted to use that bed in her room, and then I end up placing down like a little makeup station, also end up placing down like a chest of drawers unit. But now, as you can see over here, I've now moved on into the next bedroom, which is just the guest bedroom. So like I said, I imagine that sometimes spellcasters from all over will travel to the world of Glimmerbrook, and they'll travel to come and see this family. I basically just wanted to have the option for, say if one of them spellcasters does come from a really far away place, maybe you want to invite them to stay over the night, and so it'll be nice to have a spare bedroom. Also, there was just like an empty room in this house, and I was going to make this into like another skill building room or like another activity room, but I just thought it'd be nice just to have another bedroom space. And also, I said in my previous video, I'm pretty sure, when I previously built the Charm family a house, that if you wanted to, you could turn like the spare bedroom into a potential nursery if ever the brother in this house and the fiance ever end up having children. It could then become, yeah, like a little kids room. But in here I just tried to decorate it quite generically. I did some sort of like trick with the curtain because I wanted to use this curtain which we got from the Realm of Magic game pack. It was kind of like this weirdly shaped one though, and it had too much window glass coming from, right, this is going to sound really weird, but basically I liked the look of the actual curtain itself, but I wanted there to be something else added to the curtain itself. So what I did is I placed down the curtain onto the window, and then you would have seen I used this other curtain, which is kind of like a sheer one. We got it from the Island Living expansion pack, but I basically moved objects here into the other curtain to make it look like the Realm of Magic grey curtain was bigger than what it is. I really hope that that makes sense. But anyway, in that room, like I said, I tried to decorate it to be quite generic. There is like a little walk-in wardrobe in there. There is a couple of different armchairs. But now, as you can see, I've now moved on into the last room, which is Daryl and Amelia's room, which is the brother and the fiance. So for this room, I wanted it to be a bit of a happy medium in between the colour scheme of the mum's room and then the teenager's bedroom, because if you was to ever walk past the brother in this household, he doesn't look like he's going to have like a cream bedroom with pastel blue wallpaper. Like he looks like he should have some sort of like darker colour scheme for his bedroom. And so in here I decided to use this wallpaper, which is from base game. This is what I refer to as sometimes as the Marmite wallpaper. Like I feel like you either love or hate this wallpaper. Didn't like it myself for a few years, but now I absolutely love it, and so I decided to use that in here. And then I decided to use some different like platforms onto the bed area itself, because the trouble that I was facing with this room, it was just so big and I just had so much space to work with. And when you just placed down a double bed, there was still just so much empty space around it. And so I needed to figure out some sort of way to kind of make the room feel a bit smaller. And so I placed down 2 different platforms on 2 different heights in this room. The first initial platform, it's just one platform click up, so you don't have to like place down any stairs or anything, and that's where I end up placing down this bed. The bed that I've used is from the Industrial Loft Kit. There's also like a little bookcase area over here, and then also a little bedside table, and then you go up another series of platforms just kind of like into the tower portion of this room, and this is where I end up placing down a little computer desk, some sort of like iron fireplace, and then also an armchair. But anyway guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or you can search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content, then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedbuilding video. Bye guys.